Do you remember when you learned that your father murdered Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yeah, it's a big picture that popped up, and I was just shocked. 10, I saw it on TV, and that's how I found out.
Jeffrey Dahmer's story has been told a million times before, most recently in Ryan Murphy's new true crime series Dahmer Monster, The Jeffrey Dahmer Story for Netflix. The series focuses on not only Dahmer and his crimes, but also the numerous attempts made by neighbors and witnesses to stop him while Milwaukee police turned a blind eye and Wisconsin state had abolished the death penalty by the time of his trial. Dahmer's 15-time life sentence in jail seemed to signal an inevitability that he would be killed there lest he spend the rest of his life in solitary confinement. Nevertheless, it only took 2 years and 2 attempts for someone to take his life, with Christopher Scarver delivering the fatal blow. Jeffrey Dahmer's story has been told a million times before, most recently in Ryan Murphy's new true crime series Dahmer Monster, The Jeffrey Dahmer Story for Netflix. The series focuses on not only Dahmer and his crimes, but also the numerous attempts made by neighbors and witnesses to stop him while Milwaukee police turned a blind eye and Wisconsin state had abolished the death penalty by the time of his trial. Dahmer's 15-time life sentence in jail seemed to signal an inevitability that he would be killed there lest he spend the rest of his life in solitary confinement. Nevertheless, it only took 2 years and 2 attempts for someone to take his life, with Christopher Scarver delivering the fatal blow. Christopher J. Scarver Sr., born 1969 in Milwaukee, was originally in prison for the 1990s slaying of Steve Loman, a training program worker. Scarver had trained at the Wisconsin Conservation Corps work program as a carpenter. Scarver believed after the program was completed he would be employed full-time following a promise by Supervisor Edward Patz, but when the job never materialized, Patz was fired before an angry Scarver had returned to the program. Scarver returned to the Corps Center to confront them on June 1, 1990. And found 27-year-old Steve Loman, Patz's replacement and site manager John Fan, holding Loman at gunpoint, first demanding money, and when he only received $15 shot Loman straight in the head. Scarver would then shoot him 2 more times in order to spare his life. Scarver was quickly arrested, later saying he knew he'd done wrong and wasn't sure why he'd snapped the way he did. He was sent to Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin in 1992. At the time of the sling, he had recently discovered he was expecting his first child and had been kicked out of his familial home by his mother, Slay. Dahmer, Jeffrey. On November 28, 1994, Christopher Scarver made international headlines when he battered Jeffrey Dahmer to death at the Wisconsin prison. Scarver, who was 25 at the time, had been assigned a work detail with 2 other inmates for being left unintentionally by guards while they cleaned a restroom at the prison gymnasium. When I was young, I didn't know what it meant obviously, but you know that name, you know that has been around me for that. You heard the name Jeffrey Dahmer. Heard a lot growing up, that's all I heard. He ended up dead. I put his head down. Scarver explained in the interview, as most of Dahmer's victims were people of color, largely black or Hispanic, and Anderson initially led police on a goose chase for 2 black men. He said detectives commit crimes. Believed this was an added incentive for Scarver, but officially the slayings were not considered racially motivated crimes by detectives. I needed some guidance and I just told them everything I was going through and starting to go down the wrong road, and I started to, that's why I wrote them. I didn't know what to do, how I felt about me and his relationship, all those built up years, all that pain that I had, I finally just let it go. He crossed. To act up it is. He would twist prison food into the shape of bodily parts and use ketchup packets to mimic blood. Milwaukee cannibal character. This was later backed up by Madison pastor Roy Ratcliffe, who claimed to have been told by jail guards. Dahmer would crack a joke. I bit him and put a Cannibals Anonymous meeting poster in his cell, but Gerald Boyle, who defended Dahmer at his trial, refuted this accusation, stating taunting was not the serial slayer's way. Dahmer was such a milquetoast that he would never have done such a thing. Boyle informed the media that he killed people but did not tease them. I never saw him do anything that would lead me to believe that he would replicate the deaths. that he was responsible for. I just don't believe Scarver had no direct interaction with Dahmer prior to slaying him, instead choosing to keep a distance from the serial criminal who, after moving to general population, had to have a prison guard with him at all times because he was a prime target for other inmates in the last few months of his life. Dahmer had also become a born-again Christian after studying the Bible, with his baptism occurring just months before his passing after being arrested. It's a lot of pressure on a kid when a parent is incarcerated, but in the case of his arrest for Dahmer and Anderson slaying, Scarver was declared competent to stand trial. He later changed his plea to no contest in exchange for a transfer to a federal penitentiary, where is Christopher Scarver now. At the time of this video, Scarver remains in prison at Centennial Correctional Facility, Colorado. He has since been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Godsaid and the Forgotten Child. However, because the move to Supermax was not a deliberate attempt to cause him undue distress and exacerbate his mental illness, things like constant illumination of his room were argued to be for his own safety due to self-harm attempts, and removal of items from his room was done so to prevent injury. The complaint was not held up and thrown out in 2006. In 2012, he attempted to sell a tell-all memoir about killing Dahmer, which was partially funded by the Innovative Corrections Education Foundation, which was established to assist students whose parents are incarcerated. Since then, he has reconnected with his father, and the two have continued to write to each other. Everyone, that's it for this video. Until next time.